In this session, I am going to talk the overview of priesthood. So, because we started a series which is called like priesthood, and when we talk about priesthood, a priest always needs a temple or a tabernacle to do his own ministry. So, and a tabernacle requires a priest too. So that's why we see these two are really intertwined and they work together. And as we talked in the couple of sessions, that Masood went through some overall understanding of how this tabernacle and priesthood works basically. But one thing that we need to understand is when we talk about one thing that we need to understand is this, that the glory doesn't come to the temple unless there is a ministry of a priest. So you can build the temple, but if we look at what happened in the Old Testament, that God showed Adam and he told Adam, hey Adam, he told Moses, so Moses, you need to look at the pattern that I show you and you build that tabernacle and according to the pattern that I show you. And we talked about it, and you guys have been with us, and you know what I'm going to say in this teaching. Probably you know a lot of it, but for the people that are going to watch that in YouTube, so we want to just start with the basics so that once for all we have something built up from the foundation up, so that we can, you know, we don't just talk from here all the time, so we can have something built up right to here. So this is how this priesthood is going to work. But what I wanted to say is when God told Moses that you need to build this tabernacle, he said that you need to make sure that you make the tabernacle according to the pattern that I showed you on the mountain. So Moses was going up to the mountain, coming down, and God was showing some things to him. And in some point he comes down and his face is reflecting the glory of God, because he was so much in the presence of God that he started reflecting this glory. So when he was on the mountain, God showed him something, and he showed him the tabernacle, the original tabernacle that Moses was supposed to make, that on earth, which becomes the shadow of the heavenly. So the earth, as we talked last week, the earth is the shadow of the heaven. So, and same thing happened with the tabernacle, and not only with the tabernacle, but also with the ministry of the priest. And what is the priest? And who is the priest, and what is priest about? Like, what is the responsibility of the priest in the tabernacle? Because when God made that, when God decided to have this tabernacle, the purpose of this tabernacle eventually was for the glory to come down. So, but it wouldn't happen unless there was a priest who was ministering something. And priests cannot do ministry unless there is a sacrifice. So the sacrifices, the priests, and the tabernacle, they work together for the glory of God to come down on the tabernacle. 1 Corinthians chapter 6 verse 19 says that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit. So another word for the tabernacle is the temple. So if you read the Bible, you realize that the word temple in the Old Testament wasn't used until the time of Samuel for the first time, or before Samuel. But one of the other words for the tabernacle is the temple. So what I'm going to talk today, I'm going to take a look at the overall overview of who is a priest and what is the duty of the priest. And Masood, in the next session, he's going to talk about the tabernacle, and he shows us how the tabernacle is laid down and how this tabernacle, how did the Lord tell Moses to build the tabernacle. And in the following sessions in this series, we're going to talk about the details of the ornaments, things that are in the tabernacle, the duty of the priest for that particular thing in the tabernacle, and find out what does that mean really in the original. So what we do is we're going to look at the shadow to understand how the original works when the Spirit reveals that to us. So even though it was a shadow, but it's a great tool for us to look back to what Moses built and understand what Christ is building, or what Christ is doing basically in us, because we are that original tabernacle that God showed Moses. So the priesthood of Jesus didn't start after Moses. It was before him, because he was the original. So he was the original, and there was original temple, and there was this original priesthood that it was before even Moses came to the picture, and that for a time that was given as a shadow, so that you and I can look at the shadow and understand the original. The word priest for the first time is used in Genesis chapter 14 for Melchizedek. Melchizedek was the priest of the Most High God. So we see that in Hebrews, the writer of the book of Hebrews says that the son is called to be the priest according to the order of Melchizedek. So we see that Melchizedek was the original priesthood that came to Abraham because he had the promise. So the priesthood of Melchizedek comes to the seed of the promise, so that he can help the seed of the promise to obtain what God wanted them to obtain, which he told Abraham that he has delivered all your enemies into your hand. So that's why we see that like tabernacle of Moses was added or was given later, but it was only for a time, so that we can look at the shadow one day and we understand that the original part of it. So now, let's start. So let's go to Hebrews chapter 5. So I'm hoping that I can at least bring up the main points of a priesthood activity, priesthood duty in this session, so that in the following weeks we can just jump into the details. So hopefully we can do it. I can do it. So I don't get detailed in it, but we want to look at the overview of it. So now, the first thing that we need to understand about priesthood is no one can give the honor of priesthood to himself. So it has to be called by God. God has to call someone as a priest, and there is a reason for it. Let's look at verse 1 in chapter 5. For every high priest taken from among men is appointed for man in things to God. So first of all, it says the high priest. So he's looking at the shadow right now. The Moses priesthood. He says what happened was it was a high priest that was taken from man, and that person was appointed to man, to God. So what does he say? What does here says? It says, so basically the priest is standing between God and man. So, but he's taken from man, and there is a reason for it, and we will see that God chooses that the high priest. So appointed 4 men to God, that he may offer both gifts and sacrifices for sin. So he was appointed 4 men to bring offer and sacrifices for man, for the sin that they had committed. But he brings a gift and sacrifice to God for the forgiveness of sin for man. Okay? So we see the high priest is just a mediator between God and man. Right? So verse 2. He can have compassion on those who are ignorant and going astray, since he himself is also subject to weakness. Okay? So now here we can see that he can have compassion. So verse 5 tells us that God chooses a priest, that we will get there. But here's the thing. It says God chooses man to be a mediator, chooses a man to stand between God and man, so that he can have compassion on people. And the reason is that he's showing the compassion of the heart of God to people. Because the high priest realizes one thing, when the priest starts having a duty or doing something in the temple, he realizes that it wasn't the idea of people to bring sacrifices. It was the idea of God for people to bring sacrifices so that they can be free from sin. And the priest realized because the priest was standing and bringing sacrifices, and we can see that in the Old Testament there was daily sacrifices. We will take a look at it. It was weekly sacrifice, monthly, yearly, seasonal. So they were constantly doing something which was involved, most of it, in the sacrifices. And the purpose of sacrifice was for people to release people from something that was holding them back. And priest was standing between God and man by understanding the heart of God for people, so that he can release people from what was holding them back. So he was basically on behalf of God having compassion on people. Right? So that's why God chooses someone, so that he can be compassion on people through that person. This is the main job of a priest, to have compassion on the sinners. Because the priest realizes that, okay, it was the idea of God to have a temple. It was God's idea to have a sacrifice for people. And it was God that wanted the sinner, to be free. So he loves the sinner, not the sin. He loves the sinner, but that's why he brought a solution for the sinner, so that the sinner can draw near to God. Okay? So why is it chosen from man? Because they understand the weakness of people, because they themselves are subject to weakness, so that they can understand the weakness, but at the same time they're standing before God and understand the passionate and compassionate heart of God, so that can release people from the weakness. So do we see how priest is appointed to be a mediator between God and man? So the first job of a priest wasn't ministering to people. The first job of a priest is ministering to the Lord. That we are going to see it shortly. But before that, let's look at this verse here to understand that no one can glorify himself to be a high priest or to be a priest. Look at verse 4. No man takes this honor to himself, but he who is called by God, just as Aaron was. So Aaron was called by God to be a priest. So Aaron was the symbolic of the priest. Aaron was a shadow of the true priests that were going to be called by God, starting with a high priest of the priests. So look at verse 5. So also Christ did not glorify himself to become high priest, but it was he who said to him, "You are my son, today I have begotten you." And he also says in another place, "You are a priest forever, according to the old order of Melchizedek." Okay, so it was God who called him that you are the priest. So he didn't glorify himself to be a priest. And when I'll touch on it later, but one thing I want to say right now is one of the job of the priest was when God called the priest into the temple, he was supposed to do the sacrifice and eventually once a year bring the blood of the sacrifice into the most holy place for the atonement of sin, for the forgiveness, for atonement. And when we get to chapter 10 of the book of Hebrews, it tells us now you also enter behind the veil into the most holy place by the blood of Jesus Christ. So what he's basically telling us is that we are now also the priests. So we are also called. We don't glorify ourselves to become a priest. And we know that in Revelation, that chapter 5, that it says he has called us to be kings and priests on earth to God, so that we can reign on earth. So basically what he says is that if we have a high priest, that this high priest is called by God, all the other priests of the high priest also are called by God to be the high priest. So there is an honor that is given to us. We haven't called ourselves priests. He has called us priests. So that's why the whole series of priesthood is about the priesthood of Melchizedek, not only as Jesus as the priest, but also us as the priest, to understand what is priesthood and what is our part. Because as I said, the glory doesn't come to the temple unless priest has done its duty. So we are the temple and we are looking for the glory to come. But that doesn't happen unless the priest has done its part. So you're the temple and the sacrifice is already made. The only thing that is missing right now, the only thing that needs to happen right now is for the priest to understand that, oh, I'm called by God, I'm a priest, and I'm supposed to do something with the sacrifice so that the glory can come down. Right? So, because, we need to consider this. The core of Christianity, the whole reason that Jesus Christ showed up in the flesh, it was that he would be crucified. If you take away the crucifixion of Jesus, you take away Christianity. So crucifixion of Jesus is the only thing that matters in Christianity. Because what do we say? We say that he died as a sacrificial lamb, sacrificed for us for the forgiveness of sin. So we are referring and we are pointing at a sacrifice. The whole Christianity is about this sacrifice. But where do you see the sacrifice? Where would they offer the sacrifice? In the temple. And what was the reason for it? So that the priest would take this offering of the sacrifice and draw near to God so that the glory of God can come down. So the whole purpose of the sacrifice was for the glory, but the priest is the one who links these two together. So now, be happy, because in this series we're going to find out what is our job and what is the priesthood duties and the tabernacle and all the stuff, because this is how we're going to reign. This is how the reigning basically is happening. So we read that Aaron was called by God to be the high priest. So Christ also was called to be the high priest. So let us go to Exodus, so that we can see that the main job of a priest, first of all, is ministering to the Lord. So let's go to Exodus chapter 28. Exodus 28 verse 1. Now take Aaron, your brother, and his sons with him from among the children of Israel, that he may minister to me as priest. So do you see how it says, the Lord says that he may minister to me? So the job of a priest is basically ministering to the Lord. We'll see that in a few verses. I'm just going to quickly show you a couple of verses, and then we will come back. Look at, let's go to 29. Exodus 29 verse 44. So I consecrate the tabernacle of meeting and the altar. I will also consecrate both Aaron and his sons to minister to me as priest. Let's go to Exodus 30. Did you see that it says, I will consecrate them to minister to me? Look at chapter 30, verse 30. And you shall anoint Aaron and his son and consecrate them, that they may minister to me. Look at chapter 31, verse 10. The garment of ministry, the holy garments of Aaron, the priest, and the garments of his sons, to minister as priest. Okay, so I'll talk shortly about the garment, but here what we see is, it says, okay, the job of a priest is is to minister to their Lord, right? And we'll find out shortly that what does it mean that you minister to the Lord, and we'll talk about that shortly. But here what it says is, so the first thing is to minister to the Lord. But in order for you to minister to the Lord, first of all, you need to be called. So that's the first step. The first step was God to call the priest. The second step is that the priest may be holy and consecrated to become cleansed or consecrated, so that he is ready to minister to the Lord. Okay, so God has to call the priest, God has to consecrate and make the priest holy, so that the priest does the ministering to the Lord. Okay, so now as I'm talking this, and as we are looking at the shadow, I will here and there link that to the original, but you can hear, as we are talking about the shadow, you can hear with the earrings of the original priest. And that says, like, first of all, God has called you to be a priest. Second of all, he has made you holy and consecrated you to do the ministering to the Lord, to do your duties. And how did he do it? By oils and by some garments that the priest puts on. And the garment makes the priest qualified for ministering to the Lord. Let's go back to 28. I won't go through all the details here, because here is talking about the garment of the priest. I will just touch a couple of things on it, because I want to talk about the duty of the duty of the priest, that we will see it in the garment. and we will talk about the details probably when it's come in the following sessions. But right now, what I want to say is that your garment alone ministers to the Lord. When he puts the garment of priesthood on you, and when you stand before him, your garment is doing the ministering to the Lord. Okay, so let's see how that works. So Exodus chapter 28, we read verse 1. So take Aaron. So Aaron was called, right? So that he may minister to me. Verse 2. And you shall make holy garments for Aaron your brother, for glory and beauty. Do you see how the garment is for glory and beauty? Do you see how long before the glory comes to the temple, the glory comes on the priest? Before the glory comes to the temple, the priest is standing as like in glory and beauty before the Lord and ministering to the Lord. And before that glory comes to the table has come on the priest. That's why the priest is standing as a mediator between God and man to receive the glory and pass the glory, to understand the compassionate heart and pass the compassion, to receive forgiveness and pass the forgiveness. So we see here the garment that priest puts on is for glory and beauty, right? So verse 3. So you shall speak to all who are gifted artisans, whom I have filled with the spirit of wisdom, that they may make Aaron's garment to consecrate them, that he may minister to me as priest. So your garment has been made by the spirit of wisdom. So when you look at the garment of a priest, you see the wisdom that is behind that garment, which we will see shortly, that is ministering to the Lord. So the spirit of wisdom is your garment. It makes that garment for you. So everything in the garment has a wisdom behind it, right? So look at, so did you pay attention? So that he may minister to me as priest. So a priest can never start ministering if he doesn't put on the priesthood garment. He can never do that. It is never accepted. You are a priest and you're sitting at your home. If you don't have your garment, you are not qualified to do the ministry. So your garment qualifies you to stand as a priest before God and man. It's not only that God called you, but he also covered you with something that becomes your identity. It becomes who you are. When someone sees you, that they know you are the priest of the Most High. So we should not take off our garment. You know, when you're driving and you see a cop, policeman, how would you know they're a policeman? Because by their clothes. If they are in their personal clothes and they're driving past by you, you will never know that. Right? So now here it says, okay, the priest has this garment on, and he's supposed to have the garment on every time he wants to minister to the Lord. The garment makes that qualification for him. So that right there tells us that, we'll talk about it probably more, that we must be covered with a garment. That when you stand before God, your garment is what qualifies you to minister to the Lord. You know you're called, you're the son, but you need a garment. What is your garment? The spirit of wisdom that has made that garment for you, right? The spirit of wisdom of God. So now, look at verse 4. And these are the garments which they shall make: a breastplate, an ephod, a robe, a skillfully woven tunic, a turban, and a sash, so that they make holy garments for Aaron, your brother, and his sons, that he may minister to me as priest. So they were supposed to be consecrated and holy to do the ministering to the Lord, but it says what makes you holy is the garment that you put on. Because that's the garment, the holy garment that qualifies you to be holy priest to do the ministering to the Lord. All right, so I got the picture here. So that's my own painting of chapter 28 of Exodus. I had to make the dark background because one of the clothes, the first clothes that the priest put on is the white clothes. So, and it is called like a tunic or the coat. Now here, so let's start. So as you see, I just want to say quickly. So the white part, the white is called the tunic. That's the first thing the priest put on. And then on top, there is something called robe, which is blue color. And on top of the robe, they put the ephod on. And the ephod is made of multiple colors. And so that you can read that in verse 5 to 14. That I'll touch on it a little. And on top of this ephod, if you can see, there are two stones on the shoulders of the priest. And then there is a breastplate that the priest put that on his chest, and there are 12 stones on it. And the priest has a turban, and right on the turban, in front of the turban, there is a plate of pure gold that is there. So I'm going to take a look at those quickly, some of the things. So, and then we'll find the duty of a priest through his own garment. Okay, so now let's look at Exodus 28 and look at chapter 28 verse 12. Here it says, after you put the ephod, so take a look at the picture. So that's the ephod. So they put the ephod. Verse 12 says, and you shall put, okay, you know what, let's look at verse 9. Then you shall take 2 onyx stones, engrave on them the names of the sons of Israel. So do you see on the shoulder of the priest, there are 2 stones, and on each stone are the names of the children of Israel. Verse 10 says, 6 of their names on one stone and 6 names on the other stone, in order of their birth. So the names of the children of Israel is engraved on those 2 stones, 6 on one side and 6 on the other side, to show the equality of these tribes that are on the shoulder of the priest basically, right? So now, but let's see, what is the purpose? And why did God say just put those stone, right? And remember, the priest is supposed to do the ministering to the Lord by putting the garment on. So that means the garment of the priest is doing the ministry. So the garment is speaking to the Lord. The garment is ministering to the Lord. That we will see it. We'll look at verse 12. And you shall put the 2 stones on the shoulders of the ephod as memorial stones for the sons of Israel. So what is the stone? Memorial stone. So Aaron shall bear their names before the Lord on his 2 shoulders as a memorial. Okay. So those stones that are on the shoulder, it has the name of the 12 tribes of Israel as a memorial before the Lord. But if you remember, we read that in Isaiah, when he came, it says the government shall be upon his shoulders. So, but the priest has something else upon his shoulders. the names of the 12 tribes of Israel. So what is the memorial for? Remembering that these 12 tribes are for government, because the government shall be upon his shoulders. So they are for government. So when he is standing in front of God, these stones are ministering to the Lord by remembering the 12 tribes of Israel as a memorial. Okay? So that was a quick look at it. So as I said, I just don't want to get to the details much, because I want to quickly talk about the duty of a priest. But the duty of a priest is intertwined to its garment, to his garment, right? So look at verse 15. You shall make the breastplate of judgment. So there's a breastplate, as you see in the picture. Do you see? It's the same material from the ephod, and it has 12 stones that we can see. Look at verse 17. And you shall put settings of a stone in it, 4 rows of stones. So it's going to be 4 rows. In every row is going to be 3 stones, and in every stone every stone is representing of one tribe, basically, because it's going to be 12 stones. So those 12 stones on the chest are representing of the 12 tribes of Israel. Okay? So, but it says it's a breastplate of judgment. But let's see, what does that mean? Let's jump all the way to verse 29. So Aaron, who's the Aaron? High priest, the one who is called by God. So he's doing what? He's doing ministering to the Lord. He's ministering to the Lord. So Aaron shall bear the names of the sons of Israel on the breastplate of judgment over his heart. So he's bearing the judgment of people over his heart. So this is how he's ministering to the Lord. When he bears the judgment of the 12 tribes of Israel in his heart. So let's move on, and it will open up. Over his heart, when he goes into the holy place as a memorial before the Lord continually. So do you see? There's 2 places now the names of children of Israel is written. One in shoulder and one in the heart. So the breastplate, it was the symbolic of the name that are written in the heart of the priest. So that the priest can bear the judgment of these people before the Lord. So he's standing to bear their judgment. Okay, so look at verse 30. And you shall put in the breastplate of judgment the Urim and the Thummim. The word Urim means light. Thummim means perfection. And they shall be over Aaron's heart. Okay. When he goes in before the Lord, so Aaron shall bear the judgment of the children of Israel over his heart before the Lord continually. Okay, so right underneath of the probably underneath of the breastplate, there was a section that they would put 2 other things on the heart, which is called Urim and Thummim, which means light and perfection. And he would just put it over the heart. So he's bearing the judgment of people. How? By bringing a light to bring them to perfection.
Wow, that's awesome.
So he's bringing a light to people to bring them to perfection. So now he's bearing the judgment and he's ministering. So the garment is doing all those things. So now pay attention. This is the garment. What did we read? We read in the beginning of chapter 28, put the garment so the priest can minister to me. So the moment the priest put the garment, he's ministering to the Lord. Because the garment is bearing something. The garment is speaking. The garment is remembering. Right? Now, so let's quickly move to, I love this part. This called, verse 31, you shall make the robe of the ephod all of blue. So look at the picture. So the blue is the robe of the ephod, robe of the ephod, or it's called robe, right? So there shall be an opening for his head in the middle of it. It shall have a woven binding all around its opening, like the opening in a coat of mail, so that it does not tear. So do you see, it's very important that this garment doesn't tear. All right? So the garment of priest is not supposed to tear. Okay? So now, something I just want to say quickly here, that if you remember, when they caught Jesus, what did the high priest do? The high priest tore his clothes. Right? So they caught Jesus and they told him, hey, who are you? And he said, I am the son of, as you said, I am the Christ, I'm the Son of God, and you see me, I'm coming on the clouds with power and glory. The high priest gets up and tears which one? The robe. It wasn't supposed to tear it. And if you go and read that in Leviticus chapter 10, it says when the high priest tears the robe or the garment of priesthood, there's a death and end. So he must die. So referring to the end of the priesthood. So the garment, so the high priest tore his clothes because he put an end to the Levitical priesthood, because Jesus was going to have a Melchizedek priesthood. And if you remember, when Jesus was going on the cross, they didn't tear his clothes. Let us put a lot.
That's right. That's right. Oh my goodness.
Right? Because there will be no end. There has been no end to the order of Melchizedek priesthood. Right? So that's just something for you if you want to go and later study that, so that no one could tear his garment, because that garment was the garment of priesthood. And if you go and read it, it says it was in one piece. So it was talking about this robe here. Because the robe has to be in one piece, woven, binded together, and there is only one opening for the head there. So they didn't tear his clothes, because the garment of Melchizedek priesthood can never be ended, because he has come not according to the power of the fleshly commandment, but according to the power of an endless life. So he's a priest forever. So now let's move on. It says, and upon its hem you shall make pomegranates of blue, purple, scarlet all around its hem, and bells of gold between them all around it. Verse 34, a golden bell. All right, so look at the picture. And it shall be upon Aaron when he minister, and its sound will be heard when he goes into the holy place before the Lord, when he comes out, that he may not die. So he is going in the presence of the Lord, ministering to the Lord, and he's ready, he has the clothes on, he has his garment on, and now his garment has to have a sound before the Lord. When he walks, these bells are creating a sound. What is this sound is talking to God? That when God hears the sound, he shall live and not die.
Wow, that's good.
Right? So basically, what do the ephod do? Ephod is ministering to the Lord, and that ephod has a sound, that robe, the robe is ministering to the Lord, and that robe has a sound that you shall not die. Right? So that's another look at another type of ministering of the priest. So when your garment speaks to the Lord, and when the Lord hears the voice of your garment, your voice of your robe, you shall live. He just walked in there, right? Okay. And look at verse 36, and probably we will finish this here and talk more. Look at verse 36. And you shall also make a plate of pure gold and engrave on it, like the engraving of a signet, holiness to the Lord. Look at verse 38. So it's 37. And you shall put it on a blue cord, that it may be on the turban. It shall be on the front of the turban. If you look at the picture, so there is a turban somehow there. I just put that white there. But there is a plate of gold there in front. Where? On the forehead. What does it say? Holiness to the Lord. Look at verse 38. So it shall be on Aaron's forehead, that Aaron may bear the iniquity of the holy things, which the children of Israel hallow in all their holy gifts. So it's holiness to the Lord. That means, what is he doing? He's presenting the whole nation before God holy. Not only he's the one holy to the Lord, but he's bearing the iniquity of the holy things. Right? So now, here, all I did is, so I looked at, what did we talk so far? We talked that priest is someone who is called by God, first of all. Priest is the one that has to minister to the Lord. But the priest cannot minister to the Lord unless he is consecrated. And the priest becomes holy and consecrated when he put on the proper clothing. And once he put on the clothing, then he is ready to minister to the Lord. Not only his clothes, the stones, the robe, the ephod is speaking to the Lord and ministering to the Lord, but he's also standing there and doing other duties that he needs to do. And one of the major things that the priest needs to do is to have the sacrifices. So what I'm going to talk is right now is I'm going to draw quickly the picture of a tabernacle. Masood in the next session, he's going to talk about the tabernacle, and he laid down how this tabernacle was made and what did God told Moses. I'm going to write it down here though, because I want to show what would the priest do in every part of a tabernacle, and then we just pick up from there and maybe finish this session there. So the garment of priest is really help us to understand the garment that we receive as a priest of the Most High God, and understand that the reason we are called to do ministering to the Lord, it is because of the garment that he has put on us. The garment that has come on us because of the spirit of wisdom. So do you see that God has done the sacrifice? He has built the tabernacle. He has called you. He has put on the garment. He has made you holy and consecrated. And there's only one part that is missing, and it's up to us to do our own duty as a priest. Otherwise, everything else is laid down. Everything is ready. Everything is have finished. So, and we have something. We are part of this priesthood system, and he has put the robe on us. He has called us holy, consecrated to the Lord. All we need to do is just go get the offering and the sacrifice that is done, and come boldly to the throne of grace, because this is what the priests do when they were ministering. So now I'm just going to quickly draw the tabernacle. And I don't put a lot of details here because I just want to quickly say what would the priest do in every part, very like briefly, and in the coming sessions we will talk in details about them, right? Is it good? Perfect. So there is this place, has a veil in between called, this place is called most holy place, and this is called holy place. And God called both of them, these two places together. It was only one room that was separated by a veil or curtain, which is called tabernacle. Okay, so what was in the most holy place? In the most holy place, there was something called the ark, cherubim of glory, rod of Aaron, and it was the tablet of testimony, and it was the pot of manna. In the holy place, there was the lampstand, there was the table, which was had the bread on it. It was the altar of incense. And God called this tabernacle of meeting. What did he say? He told, okay, so let me just draw the outside. In the outside, they would have this, and there was something called the altar here, and there was this called, so this is called laver, for the washing of the hands. Okay? So I quickly drew this picture, so Masoud will go through that more. But what I wanted to say is this. The priest started from here. The priest would start from here. From where? From this place that is called outer court. Outer court. Okay? So what would the priest do? There was a sacrifice that the priest would do the sacrifice on this altar. So they had different types of sacrifice. They had the daily sacrifice, they had evening sacrifice, they had to do all kinds of different sacrifice. For some sacrifices, what they would do is they would come here after the sacrifice. Just gonna put that in a bright color. After they do the sacrifice on the altar, they would come to the laver, wash their hand there, and also get into the holy place. And they had daily ministering that they had to do, or they had once a year they had to do the sacrifice. So I'm just going to separate those. So when there was an altar that they had the sacrifice, they would come to the holy place and they would find their way to the most holy place eventually when they were doing the coming into the most holy place only by the blood of this sacrifice. Okay, and they do some ministering in the most holy place as well. We will talk about all the stuff later. But here's the thing. Do you see the priest started from the outer court and he found his way into the most holy place through carrying the blood of that sacrifice, which was to happen once a year for the atonement of the sin. The priest couldn't get into the most holy place all the time. It was supposed to be only once a year for the priest, for the high priest only to enter. It wasn't everyday thing. But what would the priest do every day? The priest would come to the holy place every day, and after, they have their own offerings and everything that we will take a look at it. But the priests were supposed to make sure that the lamps of this lampstands is burning all the time. The priest was supposed to provide the oil for the lampstand, the fire for the lampstand, change the what do you call it, the wick, and to make sure that it's burning all the time. So the priest would take care of the bread, of the table of the bread there. So everything that was in the tabernacle, the priest had to do something with it. That we will see later on, what is the lampstand and what is the bread and what is the altar of incense and what was the relation between these two. But I took this picture because I wanted to show this, that the reason the tabernacle was laid and they put all these things in the tabernacle, because priest was supposed to minister to those two, minister to the Lord through all these things. So they had to do something every day. But now I want to focus on that tabernacle of meeting, and let's take a look at the daily offerings of the priest that he would do in the tabernacle of meeting. Let's go to Exodus chapter 29. Look at verse 38. Your Bible is like my Bible, there is a, what do you call it, the headline there, it says the daily offerings. Okay, so this is the part that they were supposed to do daily. Okay, so now, for example, let's read two verses. Now this is what you shall offer on the altar: 2 lambs of the first year, day by day, continually. Every day he had to offer, right? Now 39, 1 lamb you shall offer in the morning, and the other lamb you shall offer at twilight. Right? With the 1 lamb shall be 1/10 of an ephah of 4 mixed with 1/4 of a hin of pressed oil, and 1/4 of a hin of a wine as a drink offering. So he goes on and explaining. But now here's the part I want to get. Look at verse 42. This shall be a continual burnt offering throughout your generations at the door of the tabernacle of meeting before the Lord. Look at the tabernacle of meeting that I drew. So you need to do the offering at the door of the tabernacle. Why? Because the altar was there. Do you see the altar? So they were outside of this tabernacle of meeting doing their daily sacrifices before the Lord. So now look at this. At the door of the tabernacle of meeting before the Lord, where I will meet you to speak with you. So what was the purpose of the tabernacle of meeting? It was a meeting between God and man. It was a place that God would speak to a man. And that man was the man that God had called, God had made holy, God had clothed him, and God had appointed him to be a priest. What does he say? He says, when the moment you bring a daily offering, I shall speak with you.
Wow.
Where? In the tabernacle of meeting. If you look at the word meeting, it's the word that is used in Genesis 1:7, that he says, God said, let us make the stars for the seasons and times and appointed times. The word meeting is that season or the appointed time. Or if, for example, the angel came to Abraham and said, Sarah shall have a son in an appointed time. That's the word there. So there is an appointed time that you meet with God. So what he says, when the priests start offering sacrifices every day, God says, I will meet with you. So one of the jobs of a priest is to meet with God. Okay? I will meet with you, to speak with you, and there I will meet with you, with the children of Israel. Okay, hello? The tabernacle of meeting was a holy and most holy place. The children of Israel couldn't enter. It was only the priest could enter. But what does God say? God says what he told Moses in the beginning. If you hear my voice, you will be the kingdom of priests.
Yeah.
So the children of Israel were supposed to meet with God in the tabernacle of meeting. How? To hear his voice.
The appointed time.
In the appointed time. Right? So Masood, you will talk more about this, right? In the next? Yeah. Okay. So Masood will talk about the tabernacle of meeting more. But this is amazing. The tabernacle of meeting was placed that God would meet with a man.
Yeah.
And he speaks with man. So that was the job of a priest, to ministering to the Lord until the appointed time comes for him to hear, and God meets with him every day. But how does he do it? By offering, that we will talk about it shortly. Look at verse 43. I want to read it again. And there I will meet with the children of Israel, and the tabernacle shall be sanctified by my glory. Here you go. Glory came. Do you want the glory come to the temple? You need to have a continual offering, daily offering to the Lord, the evening and the morning. As a priest, we will see shortly how does it look like in today's life that we have, the today's priesthood or the today's tabernacle. We'll see it shortly. But let's look this, verse 44. I will consecrate the tabernacle of meeting and the altar. I will also consecrate both Aaron and his sons to minister to me as priest. All right? So what is your ministering to the Lord? To meet the Lord. When you hear him, you're ministering to the Lord. When you put on your garment and you bring the daily sacrifice and he meets with you, that's your ministry. Meeting with God. This is our ministry, to meet with God, right? Look at verse 45. And something happens when you do that. Verse 45 tells us, I will dwell among the children of Israel, and I will be their God. So he says, I will dwell, and I will be their God. Verse 46, and they shall know that I am the Lord their God, who brought them out of the land of Egypt, that I may dwell among them. I am the Lord their God. Okay, so he says, when you do the offering of everyday offering of the temple, like for to the Lord, that's every day. But what something happens, you meet with God, you hear his voice, and then you realize, oh, he was the one who brought me out of the land of Egypt. So you remember the Passover sacrifice.
That's good.
You remember that sin doesn't have power over you. Death is already passed over you. And what do? It becomes to a day, once a year, a day that you will enter the most holy place by the blood of the Lamb. But the priest wouldn't just enter once a year there. It was once a year to enter the most holy place. But that was not the once a year ministry of the priest. Priest was ministering every day. And when that once the year came, he was bold to enter. Okay, I have to repeat it again. Once a year, priest would enter the most holy place. But the whole year, he wasn't. He wouldn't. What was he doing? He was offering the daily sacrifice. And when he was offering those daily sacrifices, he was remembering, the priest was remembering, this is the Lord God who did the Passover sacrifice for me. And because he was meeting with God every day, the appointed time came for him to enter the most holy place.
Wow.
That we will talk about what is the significance of most holy place. It's the throne. It's where you sit. It's where you want to enter. It's where you really reign. The priest is not supposed to stay at the altar. The priest is not supposed to be in the holy place all the time. The priest is supposed to get into the most holy place. That's why we see that in the book of Hebrews, come boldly to the throne, to the most holy place. But how does that happen? One time, in an appointed time. But what is the process of getting there? When you start offering daily sacrifices, you meet with God every day, and at the appointed time for you to come, not only to enter the holy place, but also to enter the most holy place. But it starts with a daily sacrifice. So now let's go to the book of Hebrews chapter 13. Okay. Hebrews chapter 13. Look at verse 10. We have an altar from which those who serve the tabernacle have no right to eat. For the bodies of those animals whose blood is brought into the sanctuary by the high priest for sin are burned outside the camp. I just want to explain that a little. They have different types of sin offerings. Some types of sin offerings, it was that the priest would bring the blood into the tabernacle of meeting, which is called sanctuary. Other types of offering was the priest would have just used the blood on the altar and shed the blood on the horns of the altar. So they would never bring that inside the tabernacle of meeting. So the sacrifices that they would bring the blood inside, they weren't supposed to eat it. So this is what he says. So they're not supposed to eat the flesh of it because they come inside. So now here, we are the book of Hebrews. He says, guys, you're supposed to bring the blood into the most holy place. So what do you need to do now? Right? Look at verse 12. Therefore Jesus also, that he might sanctify the people with his own blood, suffered outside the gate. Therefore, this is our job. We have the blood in our hands, and this is what we need to do. Therefore, let us go forth to him outside the camp, bearing his reproach. For here we have no abiding or continuing city, but we seek the one to come. Therefore, verse 15 is my point. Therefore, by him let us continually offer the sacrifice of praise. What was the priest supposed to do? Continually offer day by day some kind of sacrifice.
Yes.
What was the sacrifice? A lamb in the morning and in the evening. So here says you've got your lamb, you've got your sacrifice. You go to Jesus who suffered outside the camp, who was that lamb, the daily offering for you. So what do you need to do? You need to bring that sacrifice of offering now to the Lord as a priest. The sacrifice is done. The priest has to do the ministering part of it. So what is he doing? So you go and you bring the sacrifice of praise to God continually. That is the fruit of lips.
Wow.
Giving thanks to his name. So let's recap. So we're talking about the jobs of priest, the duty of priest. One of the duty of priest was to do offerings every day. And once he was doing the offerings, he would meet with God. Here says, guys, you've got your offering. What you need to do, you need to provide that sacrifice to the Lord. Do the ministering part of it. How? Now it's the sacrifice of your lips. Why? Because the lamb is already sacrificed. So what do? You bring then praise and thanksgiving in the morning as a priest and in the evening for the offering. And God will meet with you there every day. That's the job of priest. If God doesn't meet with you every day, that means the sacrifice is not accepted.
Wow.
But if you bring an acceptable sacrifice, which was Christ who died, then you will meet with God once you do your priesthood ministering to the Lord. So do you see the sacrifice is done? God is ready to meet. All you need to do is open up your mouth. And what do you need to do? You need to give thanks because of the sacrifice to the Lord. And this is how you are ministering.
Wow.
Just want to quickly show you something else. And then I'm just wrapping up. So the priest was ministering to the Lord. What are we doing? What is our ministering to the Lord now? What is the one type of ministering to the Lord? Praising and thanksgiving. When? Every day. Continually. Day and night. So, and he will meet with us. And guess what happens? When we do that every day, it will come an appointed time that we will enter the most holy place. It will come that appointed time of meeting to meet God face to face from the inside, the most holy place. All right. So what just want to show, because now we are talking about the fruit of our lips and giving thanksgiving, I want to just show something in alignment with this that is part of a priesthood. Now let's look at Hebrews chapter 9. So one thing I want to say. Before priest, we said that priest is standing between God and man, right? Mm-hmm. But here, priest is offering sacrifice every day and there is no man. He's doing it in his own private time between God and himself. Mm-hmm. And once a year, people would bring their sacrifice for the offering of sin to the priest. What is he saying? He says, before you can stand as God before man, you need to meet God every day. Before you can have compassion on the needy, before you can bring a help to someone who needs, what you need to do is every day you need to meet with God. That's the job of a priest. The honor has been given to us to meet with God every day. And once we meet every day, then we understand the heart and compassion of the heart of God, that the Lord is merciful, the Lord is compassionate, the Lord is gracious. And when you are filled with it, then you can just easily bring that to those who need it.
That's good.
So we are so focused on this and we forget this. That's only once in a while. But the priest day and night is ministering to the Lord by praise and thanksgiving. And now we want to see another way of ministering to the Lord is actually praying. Let's look at Hebrews chapter 9, verse 14. Let's read from verse 13. For if the blood of bulls and goats and the ashes of a heifer, sprinkling the unclean, sanctifies for the purifying of the flesh, how much more shall the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself without spot to God, cleanse your conscience from dead works to serve the living God. To serve. What did we say in Hebrews 13? He says, okay guys, you're serving, those who are serving at the altar, you're the one who's serving at the altar, you need to go to Jesus who was crucified outside the camp and offer the sacrifice of praise. So that's your service to the altar. That's your service. So here it says, cleanse your conscience from dead work to serve the living God. So how do you serve the living God? By a conscience that is pure, by the blood of the sacrifice. And what do? You are giving the offering of your lips. Your words become your serving, because comes out of a pure conscience, right? So now let's look at this and we see how Paul as a priest was doing the same thing. Let's go to 2 Timothy chapter 1. 2 Timothy chapter 1 verse 3, and we will close with this verse here. I thank God whom I serve. It's the same word. So the one who serves at the altar serves with the pure conscience. I thank God whom I serve with the pure conscience. What is he saying? He says the blood of Jesus Christ has washed my conscience so I can serve the living God. Right?
Yes.
We just read it in Hebrews chapter 9. The blood of Jesus Christ can clean your conscience so you can serve the living God. Paul says, I thank God whom I serve with a pure conscience. So he says what? I'm a priest whose the blood is washed my conscience clean. So I'm serving,
Amen.
right? But let's see, what is he doing? He's serving God. How is he serving God? As my forefathers did, as without ceasing, I remember you in my prayers day and night. Day and
Night.
continue. Day and night. What was the daily sacrifice? It was day and night sacrifice. Evening and morning sacrifice. What is he doing? He's going outside the camp and he see the sacrifice. The Son of God, the Lamb, Jesus Christ, is crucified, is sacrificed. So now, what is he doing? He's remembering you. He's worshiping, praising, giving thanks to God for the work he has done for you. So what is he doing? He's serving God. Why? Because he looks at the sacrifice and he realized it was for me, it was for you. So I thank God for you, for the sacrifice that is for you, for your sin, for your freedom, for your life, for something for you.
He's bearing their judgment before the Lord.
That's right. He's bearing their judgment before the Lord.
On his heart.
He's bringing a sacrifice day and night by praying for others. Why? Because he looked at the sacrifice. And now what he's doing his priesthood job. So now tell me, so he's doing this. Do you think now he meets with God? Because what did we read in Exodus? He said, if you bring day and night sacrifice to me, then I will meet with you. So he says, I'm meeting with God every day and I'm serving God with a pure conscience. So he's bearing in his heart the name of the tribe of Israel, the people of God, because he realized that Jesus Christ has died for them. And now my job as a priest is to praise him and giving thanks to him for the amazing work he has done, so that you can have something he has done for. And this is how I am serving God. Do you want to serve God? Get into your room and pray for people.
Wow.
Amen.